and our sponsor today is Stone Branch. For our presentations today, we'll hear first from James Kabelis with TDWI, and after Jim speaks, we'll be joined by Peter Ballier and Nils Boer with Stone Branch for presentations and a panel discussion. Again, today we're going to be discussing simplifying orchestration, observability, and control over hybrid data pipelines, and our first speaker is James Kabelis. He's the Senior Director of Research for Data Management at TDWI. Jim is a veteran thought leader, industry analyst, consultant, author, and speaker on analytics and data management. Over the past 3 decades, Jim has held analyst positions at Futurum Research, Wikibon, Forrester Research, Current Analysis, and the Burton Group. He also served as Senior Program Director for Product Marketing for Big Data Analytics with IBM, where he was both a subject matter expert and a strategist on thought leadership and content marketing programs targeted at the data science community. At TDWI, Jim focuses on data management, which encompasses database platforms, data governance, data integration, master data management, data ops pipelines, and more. Welcome, Jim, and with that, I'll hand it over to you now.
Thank you, Andrew. Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Yes, today we're discussing orchestration, observability, and control over the hybrid data pipeline. So at TWI, we have been covering and researching trends in data pipelines for quite some time. It's among our core focus areas. Of course, data pipelines are the set of processes and platforms and tools through which enterprises ingest, prepare, transform, cleanse, and govern the data that they deploy downstream into analytics and other applications. And really, data pipelines are as complex as enterprise computing environments of necessity. So hybrid data pipelines, in other words, hybridization of open source and proprietary software platforms, is an important trend in the modern data pipeline. Likewise, hybridization of cloud-based and on-premises environments is also a very important trend, and I'll be showing you some recent TWI research in that regard. In terms of very complex data pipelines that enterprises must manage in real time, and really the pipelines are managing both the data and the analytics, or they're executing both the data and the analytics workloads across increasingly complex environments, and doing so in low latency real-time environments where tracking of the movement and the monitoring of the workloads and management of all of that have to happen in real time at the speed of business in order to detect, diagnose, diffuse, and remediate any issues that may be occurring in terms of the processing of data, or the health of data, or the health of the pipelines, or all of the above. So enterprises really have a complex set of challenges in managing the hybrid data pipelines and orchestrating the movement of all these workloads, as well as maintaining observability, being able to monitor and control these pipelines in real time because the business depends on them. So in a TWI research study, in a survey we did of data management analytics professionals, we asked them, what are the top challenges that you have faced in managing your data in the cloud? And first and foremost, it's really managing data integration, data pipelines across hybrid environments, and runner-up fairly close behind was managing data governance across increasingly complex cloud environments. So really simplifying orchestration of hybrid data pipelines is a key challenge. Simplifying the orchestration of ETL and data cleansing and other workloads across environments that have many nodes and clusters and clouds and platforms that need to work together seamlessly. We asked in another study, what data management tools does your organization currently use? It was clear from the responses you can see here is that enterprises are orchestrating data pipelines across very complex hybrid environments. Open source, proprietary, a broad range of platforms of, from data lakes and data warehouses through, ETL and real-time streaming backends and the like. So the data moves over a wide range of disparate platforms, but there's a strong requirement everywhere for monitoring and managing these workloads across these complex environments in a way that's seamless and unified, and to keep the flow of data and the processing of data uninterrupted as organizations scale up and out, and as they manage real-time business processes that involve data. We asked in the same study, we ask practitioners to state their degree of agreement or disagreement with the following statement. It is important to make use of intelligent tools on the market that incorporate artificial intelligence and machine learning for data management, for profiling, transforming, and processing data. And what we can see is that clearly there's a strong agreement with this statement that AI and ML inside of the tooling for managing and monitoring your data pipelines is critically important. Close to 3/4 of the respondents either agreed or completely agreed with that statement. So data ops professionals are increasingly prioritizing and adopting intelligent tooling for managing, monitoring, observing, and controlling data pipelines. And these pipelines, these tools increasingly involve automation of all of the processes for data ingestion, transformation, and so on. We ask practitioners to state their degree of agreement with the following statement. Tools that automate data management processes are key for our success. And once again, it was clear that there's strong agreement among practitioners, data practitioners, with this statement. The need for automation is absolutely essential in data pipeline management. Once again, close to 3/4 of respondents stated their agreement or complete agreement with that statement. And that was no surprise. We've been seeing at TWI this trend toward greater pipeline automation continue to intensify in the enterprise world. Now, more organizations are doing data pipeline management, not just your traditional data engineers and data ops professionals, but with people of perhaps lesser experience or lesser skill in managing the guts of a data pipeline. So there's a strong need for self-service tooling to help both seasoned professionals to automate data pipelines to a greater degree, but also to allow pipeline monitoring, orchestration, management, and control to be handled by a broader variety of what some call citizen data engineers. So when we asked in the survey, how satisfied are you with the self-service data preparation tools in your organization's current data and analytics efforts? What we saw was it was sort of down the middle. It's equally divided between those who are satisfied with the self-service data preparation tools that they're using, and about an equal percentage are dissatisfied, not entirely satisfied with the self-service tooling that's currently available to their data management and analytics staff to monitor, orchestrate, and control their data pipelines in real time. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Andrew to introduce the gentleman from Stone Branch.
Thank you very much, Jim. That was a great presentation there. And it is my pleasure to introduce our guest speakers today. First of which is Peter Bollier with Stone Branch. As CTO, Peter's mission is to bring Stone Branch's vision to the market. With more than 25 years of experience in technology, product strategy, development, and operations, he is recognized industry thought leader in the areas of cloud and big data analytics. Prior to Stone Branch, Peter helped drive innovations as a senior leader with organizations including SAP, Deloitte Consulting, and Visiprise. And our second guest speaker today is Nils Boer with Stone Branch as well. Nils is the VP of Solutions Management at Stone Branch. His 20-plus years of experience make him a well-known thought leader in application development, maintenance, and operations space within enterprise IT. Nils possesses extensive expertise in IT automation and orchestration across SAP ECC, HANA, S/4HANA, and Fiori environments. Prior to Stone Branch, he held senior IT leadership roles with such global entities as Ericsson, SAP, BMC, and Capgemini. Welcome to you both, and with that, I'll hand it over to you, Peter.
Thanks, Andrew. Hello, everybody. Nils and I are going to give you kind of an overview of one of the problems that we're trying to solve with data pipelines, which is all the orchestration of all the technologies and tools that are used there. I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of an overview of how we see it, and then Nils is going to actually give you a hands-on demo of how we use our orchestration tool, Universal Automation Center, and hopefully that'll generate a lot of questions that you might have, and we'll answer those in the remaining time that we have. Data pipelines, you know, I'm sure people here typically know what a data pipeline is. Involves various stages that are pretty much common. You know, I've seen a lot of diagrams. They pretty much are very typical of this here. One thing I want to point out is that this is a data pipeline stages, but there's typically things that happen before and after this. And we'll talk about how orchestration tools kind of solve that problem about all of the activities outside of the data pipeline. But you got your data sources that come in. Those can be coming from a lot of different systems that are internal. They can come from third-party sources. They can come from the cloud where you store it. Very complex in a hybrid landscape. Data integration or transformation, as you sometimes call it, is all about massaging the data, changing it, getting it into a format that you can use and store it in some sort of a structured manner. The storage, as we all know, you can have your classical types of storage in a data warehouse, or more what we see now is data lakes, especially when you look at cloud storage technologies. And then the analyze has something that's changed a lot recently because you have a lot of now AI that goes on there. We have machine learning pipelines that use this a lot. And then you also have different tools that we've seen pop up that do different types of analysis. And the delivery side also is changing a lot because it used to be, this used to generate reports, dashboard, different visualizations. We see this generating a lot of APIs now, where data can be grabbed through an API, especially when you look at how you integrate a machine learning model into systems that will leverage that model. But all of this has a tremendous amount of tools, and this has been exploded over the last 5 years, especially with cloud, because cloud has made a lot of these tools very easy to access, very cheap to access. And there's also a lot of different uses of data now. And so we see a lot of tool sprawl out there. And one of the challenges, which is kind of what Jim was talking about, was how do you automate this process to where you can scale it and you can manage it very efficiently. And so that's kind of one of the things that we're trying to solve. And you've got a lot of automation tools. We kind of like to call the way to solve it as orchestration. And when you look at the automation tools, you have inbuilt schedulers that are part of your applications. Typically an application may have some sort of a automation tool in there, especially when you look at the ERP systems. You have open source schedulers in data pipelines. We see a lot of Airflow. So Airflow is used to automate a lot of those different stages that we saw. But again, Airflow is a very code-based technical tool to use, very typical of open source type of technologies. Then you have cloud schedulers. So Amazon, Azure, AWS, Azure, they have their own type of automation, whether using step functions or CloudFormation or Terraform. Again, very cloud-centric, and they tend to play very well in those platforms, but don't kind of expand out more than that very easily. And then you have legacy on-prem schedulers. So this may be tools that you've used for the past 10 to 20 years that aren't innovating, that are pretty much just as they are. They're not really coming out with new capabilities to meet a lot of these new needs in data pipelines. With orchestration tools try to kind of cover a broad range of capabilities so that you have a centralized view, which is really key because as you scale up pipelines and they become mission critical, have to run 7/24, you want a way to kind of centrally view all of them running, and then have a way that if there's a problem, somebody gets notified, very easy to do root cause analysis about where an issue happened, and then also maybe even do some proactive support. So there's a lot of data that you can collect, obviously, throughout a data pipeline. And if you can collect that centrally, then you can use that data to be more proactive in terms of if something's supposed to finish or is late or is taking a long time or there's an error, you can kind of very quickly try to resolve it or prevent it from happening. And then again, scaling. So it's very easy for a team to manage a few data pipelines, but if you can imagine data pipelines will only continue to grow and become more mission critical, how do you support the multiple data pipelines running all the time? The team that doesn't want to get called in the middle of the night, they want to have a support team that is able to do it, and orchestration tools help facilitate that. Just looking at the vendor landscape, this is kind of another view. This is Gartner's view of the different kind of vendor categories that they have. And the orchestration layer really tends to try to bridge all of those different tools that you have from the different vendors and provide a common backbone that they all can be automated with. Looking at just an end-to-end flow, the orchestration tool sits above this and really integrates into all of the different technologies, the tools in the cloud platforms. And it does this in a number of ways. Typically we have APIs that everything has these days, which makes it very easy. A lot of things are using command line interfaces, which they can use to integrate with. But also some of this may be on legacy systems. So it may be on-prem, it may be on an ERP system. And so being able to have agents that sit out there on servers in legacy technologies where some of the data might come from or may use helps facilitate that orchestration layer in complex hybrid landscapes that don't just include the cloud, but also include the on-prem world also. And so what you get with this orchestration layer is one thing is observability. So all of these tools generate logs and messages, and you can monitor them while they're running. So being able to pull that data into a common system is very important to kind of get that visibility as well as being able to optimize data pipelines. Lifecycle management. So once these become mission critical, we treat automation as code. So any changes need to go through a dev test lifecycle. And you can see by having this layer, we get a very centralized view. And then integrations, like we said, there's a massive amount of tools in this data world, and being able to integrate to a broad broad range of tools in each different category is very important for an orchestration tool, so that it can really can leverage what you do today, but then also be able to take on new technologies that you might adopt in the future. And these are pre-built, but you also want a tool that you can develop your own integrations with, because you're going to have some custom system or maybe even a custom application you wrote that needs to plug into an orchestration layer. So being able to develop your own integrations as well as having a library that you can leverage is important. The other aspect is what I mentioned earlier, which is when the automation becomes mission critical and that orchestration layer has this very complex flow that it's trying to manage, you want to treat any changes to it in a very methodical way like you do source code development. And that's kind of a dev, test, prod model. And one of the things that you want to be able to do is be able to work at a code level. And this is if you have an automation team that has automation developers, they may want to operate at a code level and store all the automation in a version control tool. So you get if you're familiar with how that works with Git, you have branching that gets approved change to be put into the main code line. And then you can put it into a test environment. Once it's validated in the test environment, you can move it into production. And that aspect can also be done with a web UI, so that you can also use a user interface for somebody to propagate a workflow from a test environment to the production environment, doing the control change very efficiently. And this is kind of what it looks like with UAC, and I think you'll see Nils demo this, is that you can operate there on the left. Typically, we see this as JSON or YAML type of configuration files, so not code like you would think of as Java or Python, but really in terms of a configuration. Or when you get the less technical people, you want to be able to operate at a workflow level. And so this kind of gets more into the less technical way of building and managing automation workflows. And that gets into self-service. A lot of these orchestration tools provide a simpler interface into automation, whether that's building automation, triggering automation to run, or even monitoring it. We see this as one of a next step in terms of automation and orchestration as it proliferates throughout an organization. The different ways here is, the visual workflow builder, which you'll see Nils show, jobs as code, operating at a code level versus a UI level. Messaging tools and like instant messaging, Slack, Teams, those are all ways to integrate into the automation layer as well. And orchestration tools kind of provide that visibility so you can get notifications if something fails, something completes, to take very quick action on it. And then ITSM tools, the pipelines might be triggered from an ITSM tool, which has taken a request from a user. And so when you look at ServiceNow or PagerDuty or some of these ITSM tools, the orchestration layer provides the links into all these other systems that might trigger automation or receive events that come out of the automation tools. And then more for low code, no code, getting into more UI ways to build automation through simple forms or more wizard type of approaches. And then data transfer. Data transfer used to be, pretty straightforward. You either doing server to server on-prem, or you were doing B2B using a managed file transfer tool. Now that we have a lot of data transfers happening in the cloud, it could go from cloud to cloud. It could go from cloud to on-prem. We still see a lot of managed file transfer where you want to have either your suppliers or customers sending you data. Having a holistic solution to manage those transfers is becoming more important because it's getting very easy to move data around. So data governance, data traceability, data lineage, all should be included in a common way that you can manage file transfers. And so that orchestration layer does this because, and this is kind of, you can think of the input or the output of the data pipeline and do it in a way that it can be managed at an enterprise level. And then lastly, the data observability is very, very key. As you're running your data pipelines, it's generating a lot of different types of data, data transfers, data transformations. You get all different sorts of metrics from that. Even data quality data we see coming off of the data pipelines. And then we've implemented a standard called Open Telemetry, which has been widely adopted in the industry, so that we can feed different tools that you can use to do analysis or dashboarding or create alerts off of that data. And that kind of goes into two categories. We have open source tools with respect to Grafana and Prometheus, which is what a lot of organizations use internally. And then you have enterprise grade tools like Splunk and Dynatrace, where they've actually implemented the standard. It can very easily play with data that comes from open telemetry. But this is a very easy way to kind of get data, and then you can graph and analyze the data that's most important to you. Okay, that's my section. I'm going to hand it over to Nils. Nils is kind of show you a couple of these things within the Universal Automation Center tool. So Nils, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thanks a lot, Peter, for showing all the slides. Now I'm going to show the stuff in action. Actually, before we start, what I've created is some kind of demo data pipeline of a company, and I'm going to show you really how we collect the data and transform it. While I will do this, you will see a lot of cloud storage systems we have connected, also on-premise systems. We will call some data analytics solutions and also some dashboards. Okay, let me start showing you the demo. Okay, what you see here is a company which actually produces lots of goods, and they produce these goods in all kinds of cities in the world. And at the moment, they have one main product, which is called this product number 4. And for example, if you look here in Poland, in Gdansk, they produce a revenue of 2,400 euro for this product. So what I'm going to show you now is that this company has now created some new products, which I call product 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to show you how the sales data for this new product comes into the system, is collected, and then displayed finally in this dashboard. So I'm going to really show you how to collect all the sales data and update this sales dashboard. And for this, actually, I've created a data pipeline, which I'm going to show you now. So my data pipeline actually, this is actually our universal controller, and in this universal controller, you can model the data pipeline in a workflow. This is actually the workflow, what you see here. And what we are doing for this company, we are selecting data from all kinds of different sources, basically the sales data. So we are collecting sales data from an Azure data lake. We are getting sales data from an S3 bucket. We are getting sales data from a cloud database, but also we are getting sales data from an IBM mainframe. So this is this task actually. Once we get all these sales data, we save them all in a central data lake, which is in this case an Amazon S3 data lake. So if the data is all there in my S3 data lake collected from all these different storage systems, then actually I will run 3 workflows in parallel, or 3 streams in parallel. First of all, I will load the data into an SAP system and calculate some commissions on these sales data. Then actually I will run a machine learning workflow like the Synapse here. So I take this data and do some machine learning on it. And for this actually I start a pipeline in Azure, and this pipeline starts in a notebook with the machine learning code inside. And finally, I have the last stream, this is this one. I load all this data from the data lake into an Amazon Redshift database. I do this via calling a glue job. So actually glue takes all this data from the S3 data lake, cleans it up, does some transformation, and saves it into the Redshift database. Once it's in the Redshift database, then I run several reports. First of all, I refresh my the Power BI dashboard that you just saw with the new data, and then I run some standard SQL reports on, for example, the top 5 states by sales. So we want to know which cities have sold the most. Okay, I think enough talking. Now let's start this workflow. And to start such a data pipeline, it's important that it should not be time-based or something. It should be really event-based. You should start it as soon as the data is there. What we should also avoid when we talk about cloud buckets is to do any kind of polling, because polling might even cost you money. So we should always start those things with a webhook request. So this is why I have here the webhook listener. So this checks actually if someone uploaded new sales data in an Amazon S3 bucket. And if it's there in the bucket, then actually we receive an SMS message from Amazon and automatically start the workflow without any polling. Then here below, there's another scan. Actually, there I'm scanning actually a SharePoint application, a SharePoint folder, and I check in the SharePoint folder for new seller data, seller account data. So once this is there, then automatically we will stream the seller data to the data lake and then load it into the SAP system. It's important, all these tasks that you see here that stream data from one bucket to another, is really streaming. It's not sending the data first to a local file system and then from there to the next bucket. We can directly go from, and I'll show this quickly in this one task, you can directly say the source storage system is a data lake, Gen 2, so Azure, and I want to stream it to an Amazon system, which is the S3 target. Then I give my credentials. Of course, you have many kinds of different credentials here. In this case, I just use application credentials. Then I said, this is my source part, this is my target path. So it's really like as simple as doing a standard copy on your Linux machine or on a Windows DOS shell. It's just source target, and then you say what you want to copy. And then it's fully streamed in parallel and even with chunking its large files. Okay, now the first thing is I upload my sales data to my to the bucket. So I go to my Amazon S3 Explorer, I say browse, I upload my new sales data. Upload this one here. Now Amazon will send us a webhook request and say, someone has uploaded something to the bucket. And this webhook, you see, it in real time goes to success. The next thing is I'm going to upload the seller data. So this I do with a SharePoint. So I go to my SharePoint site, and then I upload to my SharePoint folder. I upload now new sales data, in this case seller data for March 2024. So it's all real. So as soon as I upload this, then actually you will see that the monitor for the SharePoint goes to success, and the data is streamed to the next point. You see it has found now it's streamed to the data lake. So you can see that all the data streaming was successful. So I streamed from a Gen 2 data lake, I streamed from an S3 to the data lake, I streamed from an Amazon cloud database, I streamed the data to my data lake. And here up is another nice flow. Actually, here I'm streaming data directly from the mainframe to the data lake. And before I do this, I check, first of all, if there's enough space. If there would not be enough space on the server where I put the file from the mainframe, then I would run a Terraform workflow, which attaches another, I show it quickly, which attaches another EBF storage volume so that there would be enough space. So that you can also fully automatically do this. Okay, so now you see that there is some stuff to do. First of all, to run the Synapse pipeline, it asked me to verify, to do a verification, and to do the verification, I got a Slack message. So I want to show you how you can integrate with any kind of tool. This Teams, Slacks, we have integration for all of them, and it says, please verify this before you start the Synapse pipeline, because Synapse pipeline is very cost intensive and takes very long, so it asked me for an approval. Now I say approve. And you see immediately the sales workflow, the pipeline is started in Synapse. So like this, you can communicate through external tools without logging into the controller. The second thing is there's an error here. Maybe you see this. There's an error. So I don't need to be in the application. I can just also be in my, in this case, PagerDuty. I can also use ServiceNow, whatever you want. And you see in PagerDuty, there was a ticket automatically opened. I can go to this ticket. And then it tells me, there was a wrong SAP logon user. Okay, I know this error already. No? So now I can go to my controller. So the PagerDuty guy can call the guys from the operations team and says, yeah, please put the correct user there. In this case, the developer user. Then I save it. And now the nice thing is you have even the possibility to rerun from PagerDuty, from Slack, from ServiceNow or from Jira. So you can directly interact. So I go to more and then say rerun the job. And you will see that automatically it will now rerun this job. Okay. 1 second. Okay, this is a bit the demo. So in this case, normally it should rerun the job, but I can just manually finish it now from here. And now it will go to success. Okay, so now you see the SAP jobs is also running. You also see the Synapse flow is running, and you also see the Power BI dashboard is currently in refresh mode. So once it is refreshed, you will see the new data. Also, the Synapse work pipeline is running. So if you go to your Synapse system, you will see that this one is also running. You see it's already succeeded, so it should be fine. Good. So now let's wait until the Power BI dashboard refresh is through. Maybe what we can do in parallel, because this might still take some time, I will show you that you can now do observability on everything that you've seen here. You have an observability dashboard where you can monitor on all the steps. So I go to my observability dashboard. The observability dashboard, actually, I've created in this case in Grafana, but you can also use your Dynatrace dashboard. Basically, any APM tool, application monitoring tool that supports OpenTelemetry can be used. And I think these are, I think every tool now supports OpenTelemetry. So what you can see here, you can monitor, first of all, the tasks which have been executed, if the failed task, the tasks which have a broken a KPI, which, for example, have late finished. You can check the duration of the different task types. You can see the different actions, file transfer actions, what we did here. Then actually, you can see here also queries on the SQL. So you can, for example, check on the top 5 state revenue, how much revenue was generated. So that's actually important. So you can really look into the data that you are transferring in the data pipeline and monitor the data here, if you allow this, of course, only. In this case, it looks at the revenue which was generated by the query. Then you can see the different scripts which have been executed. So in this case, I've executed on Redshift the top state script. You can see the different servers which are online and so on. In this case, my server is online. Then you see the number of jobs which have been launched. You can monitor your license agreement. So basically, anything we do in our product, you can now monitor through these dashboards by external people. So you don't need to log anymore into the controller. You can just hand it over to your APM team, and they can put the important KPIs that they want to know for a data pipeline into this monitoring dashboard. I use here Grafana, but of course you can use any other tool also. Okay, last thing. So the Power BI dashboard refresh was also through, so I can go to my Power BI dashboard and then see if this refreshes. And now you see it worked fine. Now we have 4 products. So the data pipeline worked great. So I could retrieve from all the different sources the sales data, transform it with a glue job, and finally display it now in the dashboard here. Okay, now let me switch. That was the demo. Now let me switch back to the slides. Yeah, so what you've seen is basically our Universal Automation Center platform. I think just very quickly, the key things are really the workflow orchestration. So you can model any kind of data pipeline inside one single workflow, independent how many systems you have, what kind of platforms you have, even containers are fully supported. Self-service is actually, you can customize the user interface to have it as a self-service platform, or you can also use jobs as code for developers, so that if they want to create their own data pipeline. So you can do everything also via code. Infrastructure you've seen, so in case, for example, you need to do roll out a server, roll out a storage system, you just run your tools, for example, run a Terraform workflow, run chef recipes, and so on. You can manage the data pipeline in a single user interface. You have the analytics and visibility either through the through the controller API that you've seen, or you use observability interface. And everything is event-driven. I think that is, of course, important now. Even you can start with a webhook, not just with with a message in a queue, for example. Okay, let me hand over back to Andrew.
Thanks. Hey, Nils, I have one more slide. Thanks for that. And just one comment on what Nils just said. You know, we use the word platform a lot because the orchestration layer is also something that you can build things on top of. It's very important that it has a rich API layer. We see people that build user interfaces or integrate other systems by calling APIs on that orchestration layer. So just in summary, you know, this is something where what we just demonstrated and talked about is as your pipelines, the number of pipelines that you run grow, we see customers, you know, running pipelines and they're just kind of have a handful of them. But as you start to get more and more, and these become very critical to the business, and they're running at all different times of the day and weekend, that orchestration layer does provide a way that you can scale it up so that you can support, monitor, and take action when different things happen with your data pipelines. And then also the integration is really key. So you don't know what you're going to need to integrate to in the next couple of years. And so having a platform approach where you can either get them or build them is also very critical to an orchestration layer tool. So with that, I'm going to, Jim, if you want to come back on.
Yes, we'll move into the panel discussion. So I'm going to ask the first, this is great presentation, excellent demonstration. So from Stone Branch's point of view, what is the future of enterprise data pipelines at a high level?
You know, probably just to build on what I just talked about is that these pipelines, you know, they initially grew out of the need because data is becoming very, very critical to companies, and now even more so with what we're seeing with AI. And you can't, you know, it typically was done manually. And I think one of the things that we hear from data teams is that they're spending so much time from an operational perspective, keeping all of these data pipelines running, handling all the errors that happen with them, that they're not spending time, you know, doing new things and new data pipelines. And that's a scalability problem. And so as the number of data pipelines increases and the number of tools you have increases, you need to kind of have a better way to watch it from an enterprise, you know, standpoint, because that orchestration layer isn't meant to be used just by data teams. It's really meant to be used by IT ops teams and other teams so that they can really manage the automation that's running within data pipelines, but it's also could be running automation for other reasons as well. So it's kind of a maturity thing as we see these data pipelines become more common.
Right, and as you alluded, that degree of automation in the pipeline enables a greater degree of agility in building and optimizing new data pipelines for new requirements.
Right.
So I'm going to move to the next question. And I think Nils has some thoughts on this. What is a hybrid data pipeline? I gave my definition, but really, how are you guys approaching the notion of a hybrid data pipeline?
Yeah,
Nils?
actually, when you look at our customers and look at their data pipelines, then these data pipelines really require data from all kinds of sources. No? It's cloud sources, but it's also a lot of on-premise sources. Let me give you an example. We have many banking and insurance customers, and they usually all have a mainframe and have an SAP system. In many cases, those are, of course, on-premise. And they need to send the data from those systems into their new applications, which are running actually in a container in the cloud. So you really need to be able to connect those systems and also connect them in a modern way, in a, let's say, event-based way. And this is for me hybrid, that you can connect a mainframe even with a container in a cloud. And this is something we are doing already for customers. So it's something which is already reality in most cases.
Okay, great. So what challenges and pain points do enterprises face, the critical ones, when attempting to automate the orchestration of their hybrid data pipelines? Peter, any thoughts on this? I'm sure you do.
Yeah, we see, the decisions made on what tools to use is what's driving, tool sprawl. And so there's, what we see is it's kind of like probably two things. One is a lot of tribal knowledge. So when somebody builds something and they use a tool, you have to maintain that knowledge on that tool and what they built. And so as you get more and more of those, you need people to kind of help manage it. And so trying to, what we think is, trying to come back to as much of a common set of tools as possible, and then also kind of a common backbone, like we've talked about with the orchestration layer, to really help minimize that. It's great that we have all these new technologies to use in data ops, but then there's a double-edged sword to that, in that it kind of can be very inefficient when you look at the number of them. And then the integration. So, you want to have a platform that really can talk to a lot of different types of those tools and technologies, and make it very, very easy to do so. As I mentioned, where you could build your own integrations or have a very rich library that you can choose from.
Right, great. So next question, how are enterprises simplifying the orchestration of their hybrid data pipelines? What's the roadmap to simplification? Because these are complex infrastructures, and I guess you can't simplify it overnight, or maybe you don't want to oversimplify it. But to what extent should and can enterprises simplify these orchestrations?
Yeah. So I think we have, for example, one customer that calculates a lot of commissions for their sellers. They have, I think, 600,000 sellers, so people who sell their product, 600,000, and they constantly launch new commission models. And they collect data from all kinds of sources, then run these commission models. And for them, it was important, first of all, that they have a centralized view on this whole workflow, because this workflow has more than 700 steps, so it's really complex. So it's not possible that you call one system after the other. You need a centralized view. And the centralized view is also important for any kind of DevOps process, because what they do is they launch, for example, every month, they launch a new commission model. So they really have implemented a complete DevOps flow for their pipeline. So they have a test system or a development system where they configure this whole workflow with the 700 steps. And then via a single click, they promote the stuff to the next environment. And in the next environment, everything is then used with variables, resolved with variables, so that you don't need to configure there anything. And this was for them key, because they cannot go in different systems, and even though they might have a good scheduler, the other system, but it's too many schedulers they would need to configure. No? So they need one central system to maintain their whole data pipeline, to be able to do such
DevOps. Are you referring to the need for a rich metadata capability baked in to the data integration environment?
Yes, this is also important. Yes, I totally agree.
Okay. So self-service tooling, self-service means a lot of different things. Low code, no code, visual, and so forth. What types of self-service tooling do enterprises require to automate their hybrid data pipelines more effectively? How can data engineering, data integration professionals be more productive? Also recognizing the need to amp up the automation. So there's a degree of human effort, human in the loop in these environments. I think you gentlemen would agree, right? That still needs to be addressed through self-service tooling. You tell me.
Yeah, there's there's still a lot of low-level technical things that need to be configured for you to integrate to something. So in other words, if you're trying to move data from one cloud to another cloud, there's credentials involved. There's a lot of settings about where the data lives, and the way we kind of look at it is that we try to say, hey, somebody needs to set that up, but to actually move the data doesn't have to be that technical. And so it's kind of looking at it from hey, there's a layer that needs to get configured from a technical standpoint, but trying to abstract that as possible. And then when somebody wants to move data from one place to another, it's more at a higher level where they can do it graphically, like Nils was shown in the workflow editor, or more drag and drop, so that they don't have to be as technical or have to go to somebody else to set that up. So kind of looking at creating reusable pieces of automation that abstract all of those low-level technical details. The other is on the dev test side. A lot of teams need to provision resources to be able to run their data pipelines. And you don't want to have that up and running all the time. So, they may have like a self-service that provisions different type of development and test environments for them to do their testing, or, as they're building their ETL scripts, they may test it, and then they want to tear down that environment afterwards. So being able to do that from a self-service standpoint, where you can spin up and spin down resources, is another way that it may not be the actual data pipeline that's executing, but it's actually being very efficient in terms of how they do that front end of the process.
And here's a wild-card question. It's not scripted there, but I've been asking everybody, is there a role for generative AI, like large language models, for data engineers to automate more of the development of things like ETL scripts, or is that way too futuristic?
I mean, one thing that's really important is when you talk about generative AI, at the end of the day, when you ask it to do something, and it basically generates code on the back end. Like when you ask it to graph something, it'll actually generate some code to go run some Python plot leaf, if you know what that is. The way we've talked about it is if you can represent your automation as JSON or YAML, so it's represented as code, then you can kind of, and it learns on how to build that automation, to generate that code. Then you can take it from a prompt where somebody says, I need to do this, and just to take a simple example is moving a file from this cloud storage over to this other cloud storage. It can generate that automation, but it has to be able to represent it as code. And so that's where we see looking at how automation is built so that it fits well with generative AI.
Excellent. Okay, before we move to the audience Q&A, I have one last question for the panel. What value does centralized observability provide in simplifying management and control over automated real-time orchestrations that span hybrid data pipelines? So centralized observability, the single pane of glass, as it were. So what's its role in simplification of the overall pipeline management equation?
Yeah, I think one big advantage, I mean, it's a small one, but I think is that you can plug in this observability into any APM tool. So if you have your APM application monitoring department, they can just connect to it, and then they can monitor it along with all their other applications. And this is especially important when you, for example, have a data pipeline which involves SAP systems and those large enterprise applications. Then you can immediately identify an error. For example, if you see the SAP system is down, then you might know why the SAP tasks are failing. So you can correlate your applications together with your standard workflow tasks, which you've seen in the other screen before. And another thing is actually that you can also monitor multiple scheduling environments. So this, again, this DevOps approach. I'm always talking about the DevOps approach because this is something which the customers are now interested at the moment. So you can see multiple, let's say, scheduling environments in one single dashboard. So you can see your dev, your test, and you don't need to go log into different controllers and so on. So everything is, in this case, centralized. And the last thing is when you use tools like, for example, Dynatrace or even Grafana, you have very nice analytics functionalities. Of course, we have also those ones in our software, but maybe not as good as a product like Dynatrace. And then you can use those to calculate KPIs if they're still met, and also involve other systems which are part of the data pipeline, but maybe we are not really scheduling them because they're still outside our reach.
Great. Well, that ends the panel. Thank you, gentlemen. I'm going to hand it back to Andrew, and Andrew's going to take the questions coming from the audience. So, Andrew, take it away.
Absolutely. Thank you all. That was a great discussion and fantastic presentations as well. We'll jump into the audience questions here. These weren't necessarily addressed to one of you, so I'll leave them open for one of you to answer. But of course, if anyone else has something to answer, please do so. So first question is, could you talk through the monitoring solutions a bit more, please?
Niels, you want to, since you just kind of referenced that, maybe I'm assuming that the monitoring, there's the data observability aspect of the monitoring, and then there's monitoring of the workflows that are executing through the actual platform. Niels, maybe you could talk through the difference between those.
Yeah. So when we talk about monitoring, you can of course use our standard dashboards to monitor, and these dashboards you can configure for your business users. But you can also use our new observability solution for monitoring. The interesting thing with our observability is that we are not just monitoring, for example, a server, if the server is up, if the task is finished or something. We can really monitor also what a task actually is doing. We can even look into the data that a task is addressing. You've seen it in my dashboard that, for example, I was looking into the SQL statement result on the revenue, for example. So this is why you can use our monitoring also to do quality checks and measure also business KPIs, and not just the KPI if the server is up.
Yeah, that's a good point, Niels, is that these, an automation could take a long time to run. Let's say one step of the workflow could take, hours to run. And so being able to kind of monitor that is probably one aspect that you want to be able to, to do to see if it's what stage it might be in its processing.
All right, terrific. We'll move on to the next question here. This is a clarification question, so it might be a quick answer, but the audience member asked, what is the tool name used for the demo?
It's Universal Automation Center.
Perfect. And then next question following up, where can you find all data sources and destinations supported by Stone Branch?
Niels, do you want to take that?
Yes. Okay. So basically, we support, I think, any cloud storage that's there on the market. I think we have around 80 different connectors. Even things like Huawei Cloud is supported, and also we support most of the applications which you like SharePoint, like OneDrive, Google Photos. So all this is supported. If there's something missing, that is also not an issue because we have an own platform and we build then this integration of what's that you require. And then maybe you have a specific application, and then we can build it for you.
Yeah, and then for the that's there's a cloud world. In the on-prem world, there's server to server, so it's really just a way you can transfer data among servers, and you can also essentially send those through the B2B managed file transfer. So if you still have FTP, different EDI formats, you can also do that through the MFT capability, managed file transfer.
And one thing maybe is important, we also support all these services which you call as part of a data pipeline. And maybe you do a transfer, but then you need to, for example, call this glue job. You've seen it in my demo. But of course, there are many of those cloud services which you call as part of a data pipeline. Maybe you need to call it Informatica Cloud Job. So this is all a standard functionality. At least I think for all the major tools, we have a task.
All right, we'll move on to the next question here. Longer question, but let me read the whole thing out in its entirety. How would you advise small teams to get started with implementing something like this, jumping from on-prem solutions and more manual processes to these hybrid and cloud solutions, and the different tools seem to require a lot of training and or time to try out different solutions?
Yeah, I would, there's obviously nobody comes generally with just nothing built already. It's always the crawl, walk, run approach. When you look at these orchestration tools like UAC, they can link into your existing automation tools. So we have customers that will use dbt for their ETL, or maybe have a CloudFormation template that they have, which we can integrate with and hook into maybe a larger flow. So the key thing is try to leverage what you have today. On an ongoing basis, you can choose whether you want to use a specific tool or try to build the automation within the orchestration layer. And that way you don't need another tool. From the manual steps, I think from the manual steps, you always try to look at how you can automate those manual steps, which is, again, try to minimize your tool landscape and use the orchestration layer to do the automation, unless there's something that drives down to a specific tool. For instance, we have a lot of customers that have Informatica because it's been around for such a long time. And so we'll integrate into Informatica, and then they'll wrap that with a workflow that does some of the pre-processing or post-processing after.
Maybe I can add one thing. If you want to start using our tool, it's very simple, because you can have it as a cloud solution, so it's fully available in Amazon or on Azure, and then you can just use it and try it all out. You don't need to open any kind of firewall ports inside your network. It's only one outbound port required. If you want to try it out.
That's a good point, Nils. One thing we try to do is this hybrid landscape, which is you can have the system hosted in the cloud, but then we have customers that do VPN tunnels or private links back to their on-premise systems, and then you can bridge the cloud with the on-prem and really not even have to install the product locally.
All right, fantastic. Well, unfortunately, this brings us to the end of our time today. So please allow me to thank our speakers. We heard from Jim with TDWI and both Peter and Nils with Stone Branch. We'd also like to thank once again Stone Branch for sponsoring today's webinar. And from all of us here, let me say thank you so much for attending. This does conclude today's